in promoting the book, and this gets back to the two Americas, I put out a little blurb, I think, on Facebook or Instagram or somewhere, and the question was, how many innocent black men must die at the hands of those who swear to protect and serve until we stop the madness? That's the question I asked. You want to hear some of the responses?
I could guess.
Why is it only black people that have problems with the police? Now, that's nonsense. The vast majority of people who have problems with the police are white people. Black comprise 12% of the population, yet are responsible for 35% of all violent crime in the United States. That's not true either. 75%, everybody likes percentages. 75% of black families are single parent, no father. Absolutely not true. If we keep voting for Democrats who use racism as a political tool, it'll never end.
Yeah. Well, that let me hone in on that one, Mark, because I think there's a couple aspects of what you're saying that I think are super interesting and important as we're coming towards the end here. Firstly, I think my big takeaway as I think about that is, and I think you'll agree, and I think you'll say something similar, is the story, the headline, the sentiment, the reaction, whatever you want to call it, should be about people. The idea that we don't want anybody to suffer that shouldn't suffer. And if black people are suffering, which I think there's a lot of evidence, obviously, that they are in numerous different ways, that should be the visceral reaction. It's not that there's not nuance to it and complexity. It's the fact that we've gotten to a place where we focus more on the other stuff before the humanity part of it, which is immediately a problem. The other thing I'll say, though, is that point about, Democrats. If Democrats keep getting elected and using racism, I think that's such an important, complicated, dangerous, but important thing to look at, because I think there's obviously that first point still holds, right? There's a lot of people who are just, blaming the Democrats, and Democrats are race baiting, and they need to figure their shit out, the people that think that way. But
and some of it's true.
Some of it's true. And I think we all have a responsibility, and that's why I enjoy this conversation and the way that you're reflecting on it. We all have a responsibility to diagnose, like, hey, let's all just focus on the good and trying to get to a better outcome, not our own agenda, not protecting our own, like, let's just help people and do that. And sometimes that has to look like people on both sides calling out their own and saying, hey, you are race baiting, or hey, you are being a racist. Like, it's not okay what you're saying. And I don't think we see enough of that. And that's a big, important piece of it, I think.
I would agree with that as far as it goes, but you take the George Floyd incident, which again, my book is not based on.
Yeah.
The crime he was accused of,
$20 counterfeit bill or something.
$20, and we don't even know today whether it was counterfeit.
And who cares, really, right? If it was, if it wasn't.
Now, let's assume it was. That makes George Floyd a criminal in the criminal justice system. What's the role of the cops in the criminal justice system?
Exactly.
Their job is to accuse a person of a crime, perhaps arrest that person if the crime justifies an arrest, but they're not the judge, they're not the jury, and they're sure as hell not the executioner.
Yep.
So when you talk about it in the context of can we see both sides and do justice to both? And I'm not saying that there are no good police officers out there. Believe me, I'm not. And I'm acknowledging. By the way, I wrote a very police-friendly, sympathetic portrayal of the cop who did this and the police community who was part of the solution, in Betrayal in Black. But the bottom line is, when the cops start becoming the criminals, we have a serious societal problem. I hold cops to a higher standard. And you can't be shooting innocent citizens, even if you think your life's in danger. You have to know that guy has a gun, in my judgment. Not fear it, or think it, or suspect it, or wonder about it. You have to know it.
Well, yeah. And I think what you're highlighting is it's the complexity of it, but there's also a simplicity to it. And by that, I mean, your view of you need to know that there's a gun there. You can't just fear it. Some people would disagree. And are they right or are they wrong? I don't know. I've never been in that position. I've never seen it. I think to me, the only thing we can grasp tangibly is to come back to the root of it, which is if we're trying to think about humanity and people and do right by people, if we start at that place, which I know, back to what you said, it sounds altruistic, it sounds idealistic. What are you even talking about? It sounds like fluffy bullshit, whatever. But there's truth to it. Like, we're never all going to agree exactly how we should approach it. We're never all going to agree. But if the goal is to get to the truth and to try and care about people, it doesn't guarantee us we're all going to be happy and friendly and kumbaya all the time. But it helps. And I think we've gotten off track of that. And we're more focused on, proving that we're right, or playing to our side, or looking at whatever it is, right? All the different things. And it's not that there's not truth and there's not complexity and there's not nuance to it, and who determines, when there's a threat and when there's not a threat and all those things. The first reaction, though, if it's not, holy shit, like somebody died, like that's terrible. Like, I can't believe that happened. What do we do about it? When we lose that, I think we're in a really bad spot. And I get it. It's not easy and life's hard and all the things, but I think the way you're approaching it is right.
That's kind of the point, though.
Yeah.
If you look at, for instance, what's going on right now, the insurrection issue, you've got a whole lot of Republicans. And again, I don't mean to make this Democratic or Republican. What I call this is hypocrisy. And whether it's on the Democratic side or the Republican side, I don't care. But if you look at the issue that Betrayal in Black tackles, which is police shootings of innocent Black people, the typical Republican political response, not a Republican citizen, but a Republican leader, a congressman, a senator, or a president, they all shouted law and order, law and order, law and order. And there was very little empathy, if you think about it, for Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or Rashad Brooks or Jacob Blake or Daniel Pruitt or any of those
or the riots or whatever you want to call it, the protests, that went on after George Floyd. There was
or those people, they're anarchists.
Yeah.
They're criminals. Arrest them.
Yeah.
And then you have an insurrection, and it happens to be supported by a rogue president of a particular party, and the same party that criticized the former now approves of the latter.
Yeah. Yeah. And vice versa, to be fair, right? To be fair.
This hypocrisy has to stop.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment's important. The Bill of Rights is not.
Yeah.
The Seventh is not. The Sixth is not. The Fifth is important because you can hide behind it.
Everybody agrees on that one. No, listen, Mark.
This stuff just drives me crazy, Terry.
I agree with you. And I think you're right. I often say it is break the cycle. I think you're right, because the same thing, right? And again, not to get into the nuance of it, we won't have time now, but the same thing the other way. Democrats who are much more empathetic to people protesting and violence that occurred at times, not to say it wasn't warranted or whatever after George Floyd, then when they see the January 6th insurrection, are very quickly, that can't happen. We need to bring down the hammer. And I think your point is right. It's not that either side is right. It's not that likely politicians are all wrong, probably. It's about, let's get to actually the root of it, of actually trying to be better as humans and find the right thing to help people. And if there's a problem and there's racism and police are doing something, at least it's some bit wrong, let's try and fix it. And if Republicans or conservatives and the insurrections, let's fix it. That hypocrisy is such an important word